Hey everybody, and welcome to Behind the Scenes, an Out of Frame podcast. I am your host, Sean Malone, creator of Out of Frame and creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education. With me are my co-hosts, Jennifer Mafasanti, our senior writer and editor of Out of Frame Shorts, Paul Nelson. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah, hanging in there.
Been a good week?
Oddly productive.
Oddly productive. I am going on vacation next week, so that's pretty exciting for me. I haven't done that since before all of this madness started. So we had 2 vacation failures in the middle of this as well. So 2 trips that were planned and then got canceled. So this time we are driving. We're not flying anywhere, and hopefully Myrtle Beach will be a nice, relaxing thing to do next week for a little bit.
You'll have plenty of space.
That is the plan.
At least 6 feet.
At least 6 feet on the beach.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a problem.
No.
School started up again.
It's a great time to go.
I think it is a really good time to go. It's still summer. It's still hot.
Yep.
But not so many people. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome.
How are you guys doing? Like, what's new? You been watching anything?
Well, I've been spending a lot of quality time with my kids lately. My husband went out of town for a car race, a hill climb event that he did very well at. So it's very nice. But he was out of town for like a whole weekend. And so I got some really intense mom plus boys time. And it was actually really fun. We watched Muppet Treasure Island. And it had been a long time since I'd seen that movie. And it was even better than I remembered it being.
So I remember we talked before, your kids, for a long time were having trouble watching anything with a plot, as you would describe it.
Yes.
They doing better and better with that kind of thing now?
Oh, yeah. They're doing great. They love watching movies. Movies are awesome.
Nice.
TV shows. They've started reading comic books.
Huh.
Yes. Right now it's Dog Man. But
Dog Man. Wow.
I'm going to try to ease them into something a little bit more exciting. Maybe some Superman, maybe some Batman. We'll see.
Nice.
It's nice. It's having those stories to talk about.
Muppet Treasure Island is that's Tim Curry, right?
Yes, as Long John Silver.
Yeah.
It's choice.
Yeah. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but what I remember,
I'll have to revisit that.
I enjoyed it.
The song when the ship is stuck in the doldrums, Cabin Fever, I felt that in my heart. It was great.
Song for our times.
Absolutely.
What have you been watching, Paul?
So I watched the movie yesterday.
Yeah, we had a who's on first moment earlier.
Yeah. It's the movie yesterday, which surprised me. I enjoyed it. So basically the plot is that an event happens and the Beatles just don't exist. But this one man remembers the Beatles and then sets out to recreate their songs. And the Beatles aren't the only thing, spoiler alert, the Beatles aren't the only thing that go missing in this timeline. Coca-Cola is one of those things, and kind of brought to mind kind of an eye pencil situation where this guy knew what he was missing, but nobody else did. But he didn't have the expertise or the knowledge to bring it to everyone. So
I guess it's one thing if you can remember some of the Beatles songs, you can sort of maybe work your way to reverse engineer them if you could play guitar, if you had some musical skill or whatever. But recreating something like Coca-Cola from scratch,
basically impossible.
Yeah.
I don't even know where I'd begin on that kind of thing. I have no idea.
So it surprised me. I mean, it was basically a rom-com, but it was just little moments like that I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've been watching something that could not be more different than either of those things. I've just been binge watching Ray Donovan because I got a subscription to Peacock because, in fact, by the time this episode airs, I think the new episode of Out of Frame on Brave New World is going to be out, which I got Peacock to watch Brave New World. And then since I had it, I wanted to watch Ray Donovan a long time ago, and it always kind of interested me a little bit, but it is a show where everybody is horrible. So I'm kind of dealing with that. That said, Liev Schreiber, fantastic. John Voight, fantastic. I mean, both really, really solid the whole way through. But it is dark. It's very, very dark. A little depressing.
I gotta be honest, I'm getting real tired of shows and movies that are just about horrible people doing horrible things.
Yeah, I think it's like when that show started in maybe, I don't know if it's like 2014, somewhere in there, maybe 2013, it was like a very different world as far as that goes. So it'd be a little bit different. But like, now when we're kind of stuck inside and everything is kind of miserable.
Yeah, we need more rom-coms.
We do need more rom-coms. I didn't think I'd ever say that out loud, but
just get me out of this world for 90 minutes and have a happy ending.
Well, I think we talked about this. We talked about Perry Mason, and one of the characters on Perry Mason in the very first episode of Perry Mason, Perry tries to like blackmail a studio executive who talks about, because Perry Mason's set in the Great Depression, and the studio executive flat out says to Perry Mason that his job is to distract people from the horrible things that are happening right now, and that they're trying to make pictures that make people smile for a few minutes, forget about their life. Of course, also the studio executive is a horrible person who is available to be blackmailed, but that's a whole other issue.
Yeah,
but
checks out.
Yeah, but I don't know. When he said that, I had a moment when we first watched that where I was just like, oh man, wouldn't it be nice if like that's what some filmmakers kind of thought right now? It'd be kind of an interesting world to live in where people were just like, hey, everything kind of sucks. So how about let's have some fun for a minute. But that said, the movie that we're about to talk about today is not that fun of a watch. Actually, I take that back. It is a fun watch. It is just a ridiculously intense watch, and that is Christopher Nolan's 2017 film Dunkirk. Paul has a lot to say about this. I think we all have a lot to say about this. It is an astoundingly well-made film. We're going to get into, I think, all of that in a little bit. There are a couple things right off. I will say, written and directed by Christopher Nolan. I assume Jonathan Nolan probably played a little bit of a role here too, but it's not a very star-studded movie. It's not a movie.
Well, it has Harry Styles.
Has Harry Styles in it. Yeah.
Watch out now.
It's not. Look, I wrote down. Kenneth Branagh has a minor role. Tom Hardy has a very important but very low dialogue role. Cillian Murphy has a really important but supporting role. Most of the leads in the movie are basically unknowns.
No names, yeah.
They're people you've never heard of before. And there's so much to get into with this movie. It is genuinely one of the best movies I've ever seen, and yet it is also just a painful watch in its constantly driving intensity.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my take on this movie is, I think this is the best movie of this century so far. And it's even though it's that good,
I think it's a legit argument to make.
Yeah,
it's still underappreciated. We were chatting before. About it was nominated for, I believe, 8 Oscars.
So eight Oscar nominations, including up for Best Score, Best Picture, and Best Director. None of which it won.
Which is
kind of astounding.
So aggravating.
So let's just start there, actually, because this movie, I mean, we're kind of like we'll work our way backwards into some of the. I mean, the plot of this movie weirdly is not. It's not that important.
Get off the beach.
Get off the beach.
It's super simple.
I mean, so the history of this, for those who haven't seen the movie, and please watch the movie, it's utterly worth your time. But I mean, basically, the plot is based on a true story where the Nazis had basically taken over all of Europe and had pushed French and English forces all the way to the edge of the ocean, and they had roughly 400,000 soldiers who were basically going to die, and so Churchill called up a civilian. Basically a civilian fleet of just little little fishing boats and
Anything that could carry someone.
anything
Yeah,
that could carry a
basically.
couple people, and sent them across the English Channel to pick up as many soldiers as they could get off the beach. And meanwhile, Churchill sent another battalion to kind of draw fire away from Dunkirk, and those soldiers pretty much all died in the process. But it was a trade of a few thousand people for a few 100,000 people. It's one of sort of Britain's weirdly most heroic defeats, I guess, in the war.
Basically, their Alamo.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to define it. I think it was a important rallying point for Britain, especially, and for Western Europe in general. That wasn't the Axis, but also it was a failure at the same time.
Yeah.
Churchill even said something about that after the fact. He said, I wrote it down. He said, "We must be very careful not to assign to this deliverance the attributes of a victory. Wars are not won by evacuations." So, Churchill was pretty clear. This wasn't a win, really, but it was still a really incredible sort of. I think deliverance is a good way of describing it. Actually, I mean, it's something that could have been vastly worse, and I think had it been vastly worse, would have radically altered the shape of Europe, pretty much permanently.
We would still be. I mean, I guess we still are.
Yeah.
Feeling World War II, but even more so.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the plot of the movie. Get the guys off the beach, and it's just an astoundingly well-made film. And yet, it was up in 2018, the Oscars in 2018. It was up against some heavy hitters. I mean, so Shape of Water, which I really liked, won Best Picture and Best Director for Guillermo del Toro. I think looking back on that was. I think that's going to be looked at as a mistake.
Yeah.
Alexandra Desplat won for the score for Shape of Water, which I think is unequivocally a mistake. I actually like that score a great deal, but what Hans Zimmer did for Dunkirk is mind-blowing.
Astonishing. It is literally breathtaking.
Yeah.
That score.
It made the movie.
It 100% made the movie.
Absolutely.
No, that movie does not work without
No.
Zimmer's score. There's a lot of interesting stuff about that score, too. He started working on it in 2016. He wrote a 100-minute demo for the movie. And then he remind myself here, who was that? Lee Smith, the editor, worked together to create a timing track. So they were cutting and doing the score really in tandem while they were working through that. I mean, it's as just a technical achievement, it's insane, but also it completely makes
It's a character.
the tone
It's-
of the film. So I don't know, stuff like that. And then we talked about Blade Runner 2049 won for best cinematography, and okay.
I can see that one. All the other ones, no.
Yeah.
Terrible decision.
Yeah.
So the first time I saw this movie was on 70 millimeter IMAX
me
when
too.
it first came out.
Me too.
And it was the best experience I've ever had in a theater. It pulled you into the movie. I felt like it was, been to many 3D movies, but no movie actually put you in where you felt like you were in.
No, and
this did.
I love that it's not a 3D movie, and Nolan would
Complete opposite.
never ever do
Very
that,
very few CGI elements.
right?
Yeah.
And yet it is entirely immersive, right?
And the score
Yeah,
contributes a lot to that because there's a ticking in the background the
Yeah.
entire movie until the very end. And I remember that very visceral feeling when they got off the boat and they were on the train and it just stops. Mm-hmm. I felt like I could finally relax.
yeah.
Take a deep, a full
Really
breath.
breathe, actually breathe.
I think that's a really interesting thing about the structure of the movie too. Is I think that movie could sort of just end kind of abruptly when the core action is over, but I like that it takes actually a decent amount of time after the core action is over to let you unwind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important for a movie that's as intense as this one is, especially to not allow your audience to have a moment to just sit and be reflective and breathe.
Yeah.
But it's just a really brilliantly structured movie.
Another thing I love about this movie is that there's very little dialogue.
Yeah, not much.
Almost none.
It is a masterclass in showing, not telling.
Yep.
What's happening.
Yeah.
And it just transported you to this time period, to what those men had to be feeling, and the dread and the noise, the sounds.
The anxiety bordering on panic.
Just wanting to go take a dump and getting shot at. Like that's
Bless him. I felt so bad for him. He never got the chance to do it either.
it's
It's terrible.
Yeah. The little bits of dialogue are very natural, and they're moments that I think really elevate whatever. I think Branagh's dialogue especially, like Kenneth Branagh has a couple moments. So Kenneth Branagh plays a character named Commander Bolton, who is essentially the naval commander that's on the beach trying to evacuate the men. There's a couple really important things to me about this, and from a philosophical and ideological standpoint, I think what I really, really appreciate about it is there are these bits of heroism in there that are sort of soft-spoken, and I think this is one of those, which is like Branagh was deeply concerned about the men and was literally the last person. In fact, I'll spoiler, but at the end of the movie, does not even evacuate himself. He stays behind to wait for the French and try to evacuate as many French people as he can afterwards. And the only little things that he says in the movie are, just voicing the audience's concerns. And then at the very end, voicing the elation of the victory in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And so he just puts sort of a pin on a couple of these really, really key things, and that's like the entirety of the dialogue. I think Tom Hardy's dialogue is just purely aviator stuff. Like,
and he's covered with a mask.
And he's covered with a mask the whole time.
Christopher Nolan and Tom Hardy with a mask.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan does not like Tom Hardy's face, apparently. But, Tom Hardy plays a pilot who is just part of a small, was it P-58 crew?
Spitfire.
Oh, Spitfire crew. And
with those Rolls-Royce Merlin engines.
Oh, yeah.
It really is a good sound.
It's a good sound.
It's a good sound.
Well, and Ben Burtt, sorry, this is a total tangent, but Ben Burtt used those engines for Star Wars engines for the pod racing and like all that kind of stuff. Like you listen to it, it's processed versions of those engines. He pulled a lot of World War II planes and made them into like speeders and spaceships and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But
the engine noises were this is a weird thing for me to pick out, but my husband races cars.
Yeah.
I'm around engines a lot.
Yeah.
So the sounds of the engines, the different types of engines that were used, the glug, 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 glug of the big diesel engines turning the screws on the destroyers, and the put, 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 put of the civilian boats. And just the shriek of the German engines in their airplanes versus that glorious roar of the Spitfires in theirs is beautiful.
So the couple things that Dunkirk did win Academy Awards for were sound editing, sound design, and film editing.
Yeah.
All of which
should have won.
Very, very, very
Deserving.
deserved. I think the two other ones for me. Again, I think we talked about cinematography. I feel like Roger Deakins and Blade Runner 2049 is
beautiful movie.
Beautiful movie. And so I don't have an argument there. Paul and I were talking about this earlier. I really like Shape of Water. I think it is an incredibly well-directed film. I think it's an incredible film in general. It's a very interesting, weird movie. But I would have, if you could plan this or whatever, I would split it and maybe give, either give Best Picture to Dunkirk or give Best Director to Nolan or vice versa, split it, and do that. But the score one is the one that kills me because there's just no world in which Zimmer did something with the score to this movie that very few film composers have ever done on any movie. Or even come close to doing on any movie, and it's so integral to the story. Like, Despot's score for Shape of Water is it's very pretty and it's a very good score, and I like it a lot as music, especially music to listen to. But the power of emotion that's invested in Zimmer's score is on a completely different level.
The scene where you from the admiral's point of view, looking off the beach of Dunkirk,
Yeah.
and the armada of small boats are coming home. The entire movie, the soundtrack is down.
Oh yeah, it's
minor.
It's very and
keys.
it's very synth, and it's very like. So there's. Sorry, I'm gonna. I
You know what you
I
do.
know. I
You
know where
know
you're
what
going
you
with
do.
this. I don't want to cut you off, but so the score features this technique called a shepherd tone, which a shepherd tone is essentially it's an ascending. You do this a couple different ways because you can actually do it with notation, but in synths you do it with like a sine wave that's constantly ascending. But what you're doing is overlapping that ascension, so that when one gets to sort of the middle, the next one is starting. So it's this one sort of glissando that's going up constantly. It never goes up past a certain point, but because it's constantly having this sort of upward kind of slide, it feels like rising pitch, just nonstop. And it's just rising. Everything is just going up and up and up. And then also, as we were watching Jen and I were watching the little featurette about the music afterwards, and they talk about the tempo and the timing of like the ticking clock. That also accelerates throughout the course of the movie. So there's no scene up until the end where it's not just a little faster, a little faster, a little bit faster. And so all that is happening. And then to get to the point that you were talking about, you suddenly have something, this score that has been all rhythmic and all drones and sort of long dissonances and things like that are really tough, like just very anxious.
Jarring.
And jarring. And then suddenly you get to a moment where he's bringing in like tonal chorales. And it's like, just opens the whole thing up right at that perfect moment. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff I'm not going to talk about the Shape of Water score with that kind of thing.
No.
It's just not there.
That feeling that I had the first time watching it, not expecting that moment.
Yeah.
Wow. It hit me so hard.
Yeah.
'Cause it just builds for an hour and 15 minutes to get to that one.
And one of my favorite moments in the score and in the film is when Tom Hardy's character is trying to shoot down this German bomber that's like about to just completely wreck up this British destroyer that's trying to evacuate these soldiers. And he kind of has to like go through some clouds and do like some really, sweeping maneuvers and military jargon and all that good stuff. But, and other words as well.
Yeah.
But as intense as that moment is, as important and crucial as this action has to be in order to save all of these people, and there's definitely a sense of pressure, there's also this sort of light tone of almost delighted joy, because you don't become a fighter pilot without having that joy of flying, that love of flying. And even though this is a very dangerous and very desperate situation, you're doing the thing that you love the most in this beautiful setting, and the sea comes into view, and it's just this beautiful color. And
I think the way Tom
really
Hardy
magical.
The way Tom Hardy plays that too is so calm. Like the whole time.
Just focus.
Yeah.
He's
He has
so
a job to do.
focused and so calm, and he's not freaking out or shouting or anything. He's just, okay, I'm looking at this. Like, where am I? Where's the position of the thing? Like, can you do that? And but the other thing I'd say is super interesting about that too, we're talking about, is the way the movie is, again, the way it's structured is you're watching 3 different timelines of events happening at the same time. So like with Tom Hardy, it's only 1 hour, like from the beginning of when we first meet him to the end of his experience, he has experienced an hour. whereas the guys on the beach have experienced an entire 24-hour period, right? Which is really neat. Like to think about how you would structure a movie so that you're hitting a bunch of different beats, B stories, all of the intricacies. Again, this is why it wins for best editing, by the way.
Right.
But like all the little intricacies of how you would structure a film so that like, once some bit of drama has kind of reached a local climax, you cut away to something else. Mm-hmm. But to be able to do that where everything is happening in a specific sequence and still be able to come back to it. I mean, it's just the whole film is just a brilliant movie. But let's talk about themes a little bit. Let's talk about, kind of what you guys got out of the movie in terms of, the philosophical parts of it.
It was a very human movie.
Yeah.
There were so many moments of unexpected heroism and unexpected cowardice from places that you would not have expected them to come.
Yeah.
And it was very emotional, just how deeply human these characters were behaving. Like they're panicky, and that makes them snappish and angry and hostile towards each other. And they've been through this horrible ordeal, and it makes them behave in nasty ways.
Yeah.
And that they are immediately ashamed of. And then you have the boat captain, who's just this calm,
The civilian,
civilian boat captain,
Yeah.
who's just this calm, steady,
He is
heroic presence.
He is
and
just such an incredible character in that story.
And then at the very end, you find that he's already lost a son in this war.
Yeah. That's such a gut punch too. Sorry, again, we're spoiling this bit of it, but like it's that moment to have him be so heroic and so dedicated to go saving whoever he can in this moment, and even to the extent where they stop and rescue Cillian Murphy's character, they stop and rescue a downed pilot, they then they eventually get to the beach and pull a bunch of guys off the beach. But like his will is what drives all of that, because he has several moments where he's either just flat out told to go back, threatened even told to go back by Cillian Murphy's character, who is one of those moments of cowardice that but understandable also because he
got wrecked up by
he's
a
like
U-boat.
the lone survivor of a sunk ship at this point. So and then to come back and say like, I knew the RAF would come in and save the day because my boy was that. And you're like, oh man, that's killer. But looking at looking into the history, so the whole thing, you don't get this really, because you get a week in overall time, but it's not super. I feel like it's not super apparent as far, because again, you're splitting up different time lengths or whatever. But on the first day, I was looking at Wiki. The first day, 7,669 Allied soldiers were evacuated, but by the end of the 8th day, 338,226 had been rescued, and it's all from like 800 random civilian boats, whatever they could pull together from the Navy. Yeah, like pretty insane.
It is it's one of these events in human history that if it goes the other way, what would our world be like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And D-Day, you think of D-Day, but you would never even get to that point without this.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
And it kind of puts into perspective pretty quickly how important this was. And this event, at least in America, it's just vastly underappreciated.
Yeah, I think until Dunkirk, like it's not something that I'd ever really even heard of, to be honest. And I'm sure that it's the kind of thing that British kids grow up.
Right.
That you got to hear this story. There's no way that you're not hearing this story every year of your life when you're
right.
British. But yeah, we hear about D-Day because that was the Americans. part of the war, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
As far as American history classes are concerned, World War II didn't start until Pearl Harbor.
I know.
So.
I know. That is, so those of you who've listened to a few episodes of the show will know that our producer is a Russian gentleman who I love and is my favorite. And we talk about that all the time. We talk about, the role that the Soviet Union played at the beginning of World War II. There's all this stuff that was happening in the early 30s that now we should be talking about, but we haven't talked about, Russia's, sort of non-aggression pact with Germany, and then flipping on that, and then becoming, one of the main reasons why World War II didn't go Hitler's way, right?
Yeah.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that. And my in-laws, my husband's family is Italian, properly Italian.
Yeah.
My husband didn't learn how to speak English until he was 4 years old, despite having been born in Chicago, because his mother just didn't speak it until they learned how to speak English at the same time.
Yeah.
And so the Italian history of that war is also very weird, and
it's got to be.
It's odd.
Yeah.
And
God. So Mussolini's role in all of that, but also the fact that it's being occupied in a lot of places. Yeah. That's got to be very awkward.
And Italy and I guess sort of the Germanic people didn't really get along. World War I was very messy for them.
Does Italy get along with anyone else in Europe very well?
They don't even get along with each other.
To be fair.
What are you talking about?
I don't think that is an important point, though. I think that's interesting to me about a lot of this, and which I think we'll get into in the bonus section here a little bit more, which is Europe at the time is very tribally divided.
Oh yeah,
right. Like on a nationalist sort of level. There's Italy is for Italians, Germany is for Germans. Maybe Belgians and Austrians, maybe a little bit.
But we even got to subdivide
French is
Italy.
France, like that. Yeah.
We even got to subdivide Italy because you have northern Italy and you have southern Italy, and they don't like each other.
Yeah, and I think we do this a lot where we kind of over aggregate stuff, and we talk about Europe as being kind of one thing, and Europe even today is not at all. Much less so than the United States. The United States is kind of the United States everywhere, except for you have different regions.
Yeah.
But even across regions, it's pretty easy to kind of get along, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you go from France to Spain, it's a completely different everything.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think people fully get that today, because I think we all kind of live in this world that's everything is kind of together and a little bit more homogenized, but especially back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Europe is still very tribal, and it was definitely World War II was just almost the ultimate expression of that European tribalism in its own way, which is really depressing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what else there is to say about Dunkirk, really, other than that it is a brilliant film. But
Got robbed.
Got robbed. Got robbed. Yeah, I think looking back on it, I think we're all going to kind of go,
I'll never get over it.
What happened there? Why did we make those choices? But, I know why too, by the way. Part of why is just because Hollywood likes films about Hollywood. They like films about, kind of weird entertainment kind of stories. And I think Shape of Water is kind of that. It's kind of this fairy tale thing that fits in more of a story about stories, in a sense, than Dunkirk, which is, a war story, but oh well. Yeah. All right, so I think we'll end Dunkirk here.
Okay.
But for those who are patrons, please stick around. We're going to talk about sort of the political side of Dunkirk. We're going to pick up right after a quick break and talk about Darkest Hour, which is Churchill's decision-making process that leads to all of this stuff. So we thought it'd be a really fun pairing. For everybody who is not a patron, thank you so much for watching and listening to this so far. If you want to support the show, check us out on patreon.com/outoframeshow. Otherwise, check us out at fee.org/shows and YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those lovely things. And we will see you next time. Everybody else, stick around.